Hello and welcome to Husky Hoops. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. And with me, as always, the best of the best, the voice of the Huskies, the icon himself, Joe D'Ambrosia. Joe, hello.
Good morning.
And always, Yukon women's legend and current Western Connecticut State women's head basketball coach, Maria Conlon. Great to see you again, Maria.
Good to see you, Steve.
And Coach Schumann.
Your clock is ticking, Steve. Your clock is ticking. Just know that.
Yes. I'm well aware. So we had a very interesting week of basketball with the men's tournament. Joe, I know you had hoped that we would win a couple games, and unfortunately, that did not happen. Were you surprised at how we showed up against Creighton?
Or more likely didn't show up defensively.
It didn't show up at all.
That was abysmal. I mean, that was embarrassing. You know, if you're a team that supposedly lives on your defense and the other team shoots 75% in the first half, then you haven't come ready to play. And the fact that they weren't ready to play was somewhat surprising.
Yeah, especially being in the tournament, especially with the sense of urgency that they had, knowing they had to win multiple games and they had a chance to possibly win the tournament if they went on a run.
Well, no, they didn't. They have no chance of beating St. John's.
No chance of beating St. John's.
No chance of beating St. John's at all.
They could have won 2 games. We would have been happy
that
with 2
wouldn't have
games.
done. I mean, if they had won 2 games, you know where they'd be this weekend?
They'd still be
exactly where they are right now.
They'd still be the 8th seed. What do you think the biggest thing they have to work on going into this week besides the defense?
Well, I mean, it's been a season-long problem, but they're just not consistent enough. You know, guys will have a good game, and then guys will have a crappy game. And at this stage of the year, you can't afford that. You can't afford that against Oklahoma. You sure as hell couldn't afford it if you get to Florida on Sunday. So it's just. I mean, I hate to be a doomsayer, but what have we seen from this team, Marie, in the last month that gives you any impression that they can turn things around?
Absolutely nothing, in my opinion. I was really shocked. I shouldn't say I was shocked at the way they played against Creighton because we've seen them play like that multiple times this year. I would have thought that we would have come out with a little bit more fire, being as, you know, we've dubbed Madison Square Garden as Stores South. So I was disappointed for multiple reasons. The games were way too late. I had to stay up past my bedtime. And then they're playing again late. What, tomorrow? Are they tomorrow or they're Friday?
Friday, they're Friday.
Yeah, it's just nuts, man. Yeah, I don't, in my opinion, looking at all the brackets, I don't think they could have been hit with a worst first and second round matchup situation. Because I think Oklahoma's pretty good. They're not as big, but they got some guards that can shoot the ball. I think they'll give us trouble. I would like to see us get past that game, but I think Florida can win the whole thing. Florida's really good.
I have them winning the whole thing.
So do I in one of my brackets.
I think they win the whole thing.
Yeah, they're just I don't see many flaws with them.
Right.
And they're just not a good matchup for us at all.
Well, and it's a matter of
bigs and foul trouble in like 10 minutes.
I think UConn beats Oklahoma just because I don't think Oklahoma has any size. But the Fierce kid, the Jeremiah Fierce kid, he kind of reminds me of that kid a couple of years ago from New Mexico State who torched UConn in the last NCAA tournament game that they lost. I don't know what the kid's name was, but he's that kind of, and he's only 18 years old. You know, that kid was like 38. This kid's like 18.
Right.
You know, and Oklahoma's got a kid who's playing for his 4th school. You know, Dan Shaughnessy, the columnist for the Boston Globe, had a terrific column today. The NCAA tournament's not what it used to be.
No. No, not at all.
It's a whole different. It's basically professional basketball at a lower level.
Right, 100%.
It's a G League.
Yeah. And that's what college sports, even college football, has turned into, I think, in my opinion. Joe, I had wanted to ask your thoughts on the end of the Creighton game with the emphatic windmill dunk that was heard around the world, and the coaches were not overly happy about that. Do you think it was poor sportsmanship? Do you think it was deserved? Do you think the kid was just being a kid and screwing around?
I think he was being a kid, but I think I was really happy to see Hassan go after him.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Hassan didn't throw any hands, or he wouldn't be playing on Friday night.
Yeah, he'd be suspended.
I don't know if Ross can play because he got kicked out of the game for leaving the bench.
Right.
And I think that's supposed to be a one-game
suspension.
But I haven't seen anybody write that or talk. And look, it's Jaden Ross. It's not Alex Caravan. Let's be honest here. But I think, we're in an era where teams dribble out the shot clock and take shot clock violations so as not to be perceived as running up the score. The kid was being a kid, but I also think, it's a much more viable reason to get annoyed than somebody standing on your goddamn logo. I never get that.
Grow up. Or planting the flag when they do the flag planting.
Yeah. But yeah, I was glad Hassan went after the kid. Nothing came of it. It looked like Coach McDermott and Luke Murray were Luke Murray said something that really pissed Greg McDermott off.
Yes.
Greg McDermott's one of the mildest mannered people in coaching. But no, it wasn't that big a deal, and I don't think it was made that big a deal nationally at all. I think it was big in the East Coast because it was UConn. But other than that, I don't think people in out west or in the Midwest gave a rat's ass.
How did you think the brackets shook out? Do you think that the tournament committee got it right, other than maybe North Carolina being the 11th seed?
I think they did. I started to go through Lenardi's brackets on Monday, and then I said, "What are you doing? Why are you wasting your time? Who cares?" We have the tournament field. Nobody cares what Joe Lenardi picked. He did have Oklahoma as a 10, so he was one off on that. He had UConn playing in Duke's bracket, which would have been as big a disaster as playing in Florida's bracket. I thought, obviously North Carolina, but if it was West Virginia or if it was Indiana, are they going anywhere? Are they winning 6 games or 7 games and winning the championship? No. So at the end of the day, the committee does what it thinks is a good job, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, my only opinion on that is with an 11 seed, the ACC typically does well as it is. I would have liked to have seen it go to a West Virginia or a non-traditional or a mid-major team to at least give them the opportunity to be in the tournament. I know that they're not going to win it. I know that they're not going to go on a run, but North Carolina getting in and the controversy with their president or athletic director being the head of the committee also put some shadiness behind it. Do you think that played a factor at all?
No, I believe that when they talked about him, when they talked about his school, he wasn't in the room. But I think the other members of the committee probably threw him a bone.
Yep, I agree. I think when you're there and you're running it, and you're literally talking about the back end of the whole entire bracket. Obviously, West Virginia is very upset, but yeah, that's that's where guys are going to throw each other a bone. That's the bottom line. When the West Virginia AD becomes the director of the NCAA tournament, his team will get in that situation. Is it fair? I don't know, but that's just how it is, dude. And of course he's going to recruit. He walks out of the room, of course. Yeah. I mean, I think that's all just just to make sure that you have your boxes checked from that standpoint.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I used to be told that all the time when I was a coach, and I would complain. The head coach would say, when it's Steve Culley's team, Steve Culley can do what he wants. But until that happens, you have to do what I say and keep your mouth shut. I was a little liberal with my tongue lashing, so I had to learn the hard way not to talk. If you're looking, because Marie and I were talking about it, on the women's side, they got a pretty good draw, and I still think they have an opportunity, just like Maria had said, that they could win it all. Do you think that they will go far and they have a better opportunity to make the Final Four and get that national championship?
Better opportunity than who? The men?
Better opportunity than they've had in the past.
Well, they've had a great opportunity every year, but there's been injuries that have gotten in the way. Exactly. Yeah, I think they're going to win it. I think they're going to win it all. I think they're playing the best basketball that they've played all year. I have them beaten Southern Cal in the Spokane 4, whatever the hell it is, regional. Then I have North Carolina State beating UCLA, and I have them beaten North Carolina State in the Final Four in the semis, and then I haven't beaten South Carolina again. I have South Carolina beating Texas in the Final Four. So I have two ones and 2 2s.
Maria, what do you think are the biggest improvements they're going to need to make when they play South Carolina for the second time?
They beat it by 29, Steve. What improvements do they have to make?
I mean, Southern Cal. Sorry, Southern Cal. That's what I meant.
Well, I think we're a way different team than we were the first time we played Southern Cal. I'm going to take just a quick step back because you guys were talking about this. I just have a quick note on the Creighton game and the whole end of the game thing. I just we all know what we did when we were out at Creighton, and some of the obnoxious stuff that happened. I do think that played a little bit into the passions with the kids at the end of the game. So I'll just say that. So I'm with Joe on that. I think I was okay with that. And I think it was a little taste of what we've dished out in prior times. In terms of
Maria, you make a great point. Let me interrupt you for a minute. I had totally forgotten about that 2 rings Baldy bullshit.
Yeah.
You're totally right. You're totally right. I think some of that is coming back. Some of that is stuff. And when teams are going to get a chance to do that to the men, they're going to take every advantage and do it.
Yeah. I actually wasn't surprised at all that they did that because of what happened out in Creighton. So it didn't shock me. I found it, I was actually surprised there wasn't chippiness before that because of everything that had happened out there. I think Creighton has had this matchup marked on their calendar as a potential, and that they showed that they did not forget. So anyways, I just wanted to note that on the women's side, I have us beating USC to go to the Final Four as well. I actually have Tennessee beating Texas in that bracket over there, and I have ND going to the Final Four in that bracket. I actually think that's the toughest region when you look at the 4. I mean, you got Notre Dame as a 3 seed, TCU as a 2 seed. You have Texas at the 1. You got Tennessee in there.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest bracket of all the brackets.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the hardest path for any 1 seed, in my opinion. When that bracket was coming out and they were getting down to the 2 seed, I was crossing my fingers that it wasn't us. Because I think there's just too many people there that we've played already. Some people that we've lost to already, that I think can give us a little bit of trouble. So I love where we ended up. If there was any 1 seed that I would have wanted to see in our region, it was USC, because I think we're a totally different team than we were the first time we played them. Now, with that said, I think USC is an improved team as well. They're definitely battle tested. Went down to the wire with UCLA in the tournament. I think that UCLA game to go to the national championship game. I have us playing UCLA to go to the national championship. I just think UCLA is really good. And I don't foresee them losing. Like, I have them playing LSU to go to the Final Four. So I think that we'll see them in that semifinal game. And then I have us playing South Carolina in the final, similar to Joe. So, and I think in terms of South Carolina, to his point, we beat them by 29. Now, I don't think we're going to beat them by 29 again. I think it'll be a single-digit game. But I agree. I think we're playing the best basketball that we've played in years, in my opinion, specifically on the defensive end. And knock on wood, everybody stays healthy going down the crunch. I think we're playing the best basketball in the country right now. And we haven't been just beat up in our league tournament like a lot of these other teams have.
Right.
So I think the chances for us to go far are really good. I'll also mention that I think on the women's side, this is going to be the first year in a while where we might see some Cinderella teams advance and get some upsets where, like in years past, you can kind of just take the higher seed as you're going through the bracket and typically they'll win. I don't think we're going to see that this year. I think it's going to be a really exciting tournament. I think that there's 8 teams that can win it all, UConn being one of them.
Legitimately. Yeah, for sure.
Maria, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Tennessee and the new coach there basically runs like hockey line changes.
Yep.
Do you think that's sustainable in the NCAA tournament? Don't you have to concentrate on playing your best players?
Well, I think she's going to stick to what she's been doing. Whether that's going to hold feasible in the NCAA tournament, we'll see, because I think this is the first time on the women's side where we've seen a team do it at this level. I think it'll be a matter of matchups with them and seeing some people who have guards to take care of the ball. But I think they're going to wreak havoc on some people, especially people that they haven't seen, or I should say that haven't seen them yet, because it's a style that nobody else plays. So, if your guards get hot and you force a lot of turnovers, having the day in between and then the week, I think it could be sustainable because they've been doing it all year.
Yeah.
And
they're not in an awful bracket with Ohio State.
No.
Second round game, and then potentially Texas.
Exactly. And I think, like with Texas, I think they'll speed up Texas so much that some of their bigs won't play as big of a role as they would in a different, like, that's a really, really hard bracket. If I'm any top team in that bracket, I'm kind of like, how the heck did we end up here? Because there's a lot of loaded teams, and it's a lot of different styled teams depending on, which matchup you end up with. But I mean, there's legitimately like 3 teams in that region that I could see going to the Final Four.
Yep.
It's the one that I look at that's just not clear cut at all.
Dave, you had liked Auburn, you had liked Alabama all season long. What are your predictions, especially who do you have going to the Final Four out of the men's bracket?
Well, I don't really do brackets, but I like Auburn. I like Alabama. No. I think Tennessee is good. I think Houston is really good. I think they're going to have a chance. They're playing great ball, even though they play in a weaker conference. But they play great together. Duke is Cooper Flagg he's all back. Yeah. I mean,
he'll be fine.
Yeah, Duke. So Duke, Florida. I like Auburn. I think they're going to have a chance. I think Alabama. There's probably 6 to 8 teams that I think have a chance to make that Final Four. 3 of them are SEC teams. Houston, Duke. I'm sorry, 4 SEC teams. Houston, Duke are the other 2 that I think really have a great chance to be a part of that. And then I think some of these other teams that are outliers in it, like the Big East, I think St. John's is going to have a chance, depending on how they play. If they can hit some shots, they have played great basketball defensively. The one thing that I think
John's has to hope Florida loses.
Yes,
they're not beating Florida.
Right.
That's just not a good matchup for them.
I don't even think they get there. I think they lose to Missouri.
You think Missouri's going to beat Drake? You got Missouri beating Drake?
Yeah, I think I got Missouri beating Texas Tech, beating Drake, beating Texas Tech, and beating St. John's, and then getting laid out by Florida.
Yeah, I got to make sure I write down Joe's picks just so I have them.
Right?
He's got them ready for you.
The men's side is so like literally right
wide open.
Who do I think will be in the final? Like if upsets weren't a thing and Cinderella stories were not a thing in men's basketball, which they are, so it's kind of irrelevant. I think it's Duke, Tennessee, Florida, Auburn.
Yeah.
Tennessee's guard is exceptional. I mean, he is such not just a great player.
I think the Tennessee-Houston game to go to the Final Four, if they match up, is going to be a really fun game to watch.
See, I got them losing to Kentucky in this week.
Tennessee?
I think Kentucky's got their number, and then I think Houston beats. I got Kentucky beating Houston. I got Kentucky as a surprise. I got 3 SEC teams and Duke.
Yeah.
I have Duke playing Bama. I think a Duke Bama game would be awesome.
Yeah, I got Bama Bama losing to Vanderbilt in the second.
Really?
Week. Yeah.
That was the game Maria and I were talking about. Maria thinks Vanderbilt is very strong and
they are
to make a run.
Well, I was talking more on the women's side.
On the women's side, yeah.
But I do like what the Vanderbilt guys are doing right now as well. But the Vanderbilt girls could surprise some people.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because Shay's my girl. I just think that
Of course.
I'm a little biased. Yeah.
Of course.
I actually, in one of my brackets, I have Vandy playing South Carolina to go to the Final Four.
Wow.
They have one of the best backcourts in the country. I think it's a sleeper. They've been close in a lot of SEC games. I think they're going to grit it out. I mean, they took South Carolina down to the wire in the SEC tournament before, what's her name? Kitts went off on like an 11-0 run by herself. But they got some young talent. I think they're going to surprise some people.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Fairfield's going to win 2 games.
Yes, she's a hell of a coach.
Yeah, Carly's great. It's funny. I texted her after her the MAC championship because they almost lost the game before that. They ended up squeaking it out by 1, and I texted her after the MAC championship, and she was like, "We're not done yet." And I'm like, "Damn right, let's go, let's get it." I mean, but
on the men's side,
there's no way they're going to win that bracket, but I think they can win 2 games.
Oh, absolutely. And on the men's side, I'll tell you who I got going to the Sweet 16.
Yale.
Yeah.
I like Yale a lot.
I got Yale beating Texas A&M, and I got Yale beating Michigan, and then getting whacked by Auburn.
Yep.
But
I have literally the same.
He also, it's shocking to me, and maybe he's gotten offers and he just likes the Ivy League lifestyle, but it's shocking to me that James Jones. Why wouldn't Villanova hire James Jones? Somebody's got to explain.
He must just love it there.
Yeah. Because he's a terrific coach.
Well, you know what I say too, though, Joe, is like, because people ask me about Carla a lot too. And, she was obviously at Tufts, did a great job there. And now she's at Princeton. Some people, it's just their niche to coach high academic kids.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, I think that some coaches just, they know that if you got a kid who's really going to take care of business in the classroom the way that kids at that level do, that they will on the court. And then you find some talent. I mean, listen, I don't know if I was offered a full scholarship to Yale years ago. Now let's be frank. I'm not a Yale student, but if I was, that's like a hard gig to pass up.
Oh my God, yes.
You know what I mean? Or Princeton, like
absolutely.
You're set up for life after you go to places like that. So I just think that those 2 coaches in specific are really, really good coaches, but I think it could just be like they like that environment of coaching high academic kids.
I think 100%.
And even Dave, you had said that if you went back and did it over, you possibly would have gone to Princeton if it was doable.
You mean as a student?
Yeah, he had the opportunity to go to Princeton.
It was one of my.
You could be the groundskeeper there.
Didn't they have a thing?
That was one of my 5 visits.
Didn't they? Well, good. I could have visited Yale too, but only to sweep the fucking floor.
No, these were officials, my man. These are officials. It's not my fault. I was a reigning genius. It's not my fault.
Yeah, we know. Dave's got the 170 IQ. We know how brilliant he is. Joe, I had wanted to ask you because I saw this the other day. The University of Miami head coach stepping down. He gave a impassioned speech about the NIL and the transfer portal.
You realize he did that months ago.
Oh, that was months ago. Okay, I apologize. I just saw it.
Yeah,
and
news travels slow to Central New York.
Yeah, we're by Pony Express here. But I was just shocked to see that, and he was really impassioned about it, and you could really hear the disappointment and kind of desperation in his voice because he seemed to obviously love coaching, love the kids, but the way that the things are now, he just felt that he wasn't doing them any good, and the game is just going to continue to get worse. So I just wanted to know what you thought about him stepping down from, a team that had been to the Final Four 18 months earlier.
Well, I don't think he was bitching about the transfer portal when they went to the Final Four, was he?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't.
Exactly. So he's a phony. Jim Larinaga is a phony, in my opinion, for saying that. Just like Nick Saban. Nick Saban bitching about NIL. Nick Saban, I mean, some of these coaches who complain about NIL and transfer portal, they've used that for success.
For years, yeah.
Well, not for years. It hasn't been in existence for years. But
years, yeah.
So for Jim Larinaga, who went to the Final Four with a bunch of kids who didn't start their college careers at Miami, now to be whining about the transfer portal, I just think he comes across to me like a phony.
It's hypocritical. Hypocritical.
Exactly. That's the right word, scholar, Professor Cully. It's hypocritical.
I use the right word.
It's obviously with respect to like Nick Saban, they liked it when they were able to give money.
Yeah, when they were able to get ahead.
Nobody else could, So
wait till next year when everybody gets the same amount of money.
Yeah,
when everybody gets $22 million in here, go play with your movie.
Joe,
not everyone's going to get that.
Is there, Joe? Is that going to be and we've talked about this because I'm not 100% sure. Is that going to be where everybody gets that even amount of money, and then the outside groups are still allowed to inject whatever they need to inject? Is that?
I don't think so.
You don't think
I'm not quite sure, Shu, but I don't think so.
Yes, really? As far as I know from what I've heard, the cap is $22 million of television revenue.
Right.
Not all the schools are going to be able to give that amount of money because the TV deals don't support it. So some may only be able to do 10 million, some may be able to do 15 million, but not
there's no outside money being allowed. So outside,
I heard that the NIL was still a factor. Like you're going to get NIL money and you're going to get television money, which is why I said that the combination of both would make it like the NFL salary cap was in 1995. It's just going to keep growing, especially within the next 5 years. I was told that it was going to be both. I hope that it's not. I hope that it's just the television revenue because that's the best way to regulate it and at least keep something.
I think I'm going to throw some NIL behind Maria's team. I want to see her. I
think we all will. We'll give Maria some NIL money.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think anything might help from that standpoint. So, you know what I mean? That D3, man, a little bit goes a long way, I bet. So,
well, they're doing it. Remember, we were talking with Frank. They're doing it at Utica University.
We'll take anything that you guys can give.
That's it. Let's do it. What do we have to do? Like, let's start with
endorse the Schumann Show. I like it.
Maria, how does it start exactly? Does it go into a special fund, or is it whoever wants to support NIL, whoever wants to gives to a certain player or donates to a certain player? Is that how it works?
You can do that, right? You can't designate what player you're giving it to, and everything has
Okay.
It has to be a separate entity from the university.
Yes, the collectives are separate from the university.
You guys love talking about NIL. I think, Steve, I think that's your favorite topic.
It's just because it infuriates me. That's all.
I know.
It infuriates me.
Listen, it's living rent free in your head.
It does live rent free.
There's a lot of things
rent free
in my head, but yeah, that's one of them. But
we're never going to solve the world of NIL. That is the answer. That's it.
Well, if Joe's right, if they are strictly going with television revenue,
no, it's hard for me to say this, but I was wrong. This says NIL will continue to exist after this year with ongoing changes and developments in college sports. So look, if we think now that college sports has become like the G League, in years to come, it's going to become like the NBA or the NFL if you've got unlimited resources.
Yeah,
it already is for the quarterbacks, and probably, my guess, some of the best basketball players.
That's what worries me, is because the television contracts are going to be going up so much. Combine that with the NIL money, you're going to have an NFL salary cap from 1996. It's going to be like $70 million that they're going to be able to dole out to these players. So that was my only concern. Joe, I saw that, I obviously know about the NIT, which is the other tournament. I saw that there was another tournament for college basketball, the College Basketball Invitational.
College Basketball Crown. It's put together by Fox. It's going to be 16 teams from the power conferences, and it's basically gutted the NIT.
Oh,
really? Is it because
gutted the NIT?
Is it because of finances? Is it because they get more money to play in this tournament?
I'm sure they're not playing for free.
Right.
Yeah, you look at the NIT field, and it's not there's nobody from the Big East in the NIT. I haven't seen who the field is for this crown thing yet, but it's basically gutted the NIT.
And it's basically inventing a tournament.
Well, they've done that. There have been a couple of those in recent years too. But yeah, this is just Fox, because Fox doesn't get a piece of the pie.
Right.
For the NCAAs, because it's all ESPN. It's all the CBS on the men's side and TNT, and on the women's side, it's all ESPN and ABC. That Fox wanted to get involved in it, and you could win a lot of money.
They should call that the transfer showcase.
We have a comment from Demetrius here on the Montana-Wisconsin game and why we're not talking about it. I have Montana.
Oh yeah,
I have Montana beating Wisconsin in the first round, and I think it's going to be them versus BYU. That's who I have in the second round.
Who's he talking about?
The Montana-Wisconsin game.
Are we talking men?
Yeah, men.
Yes.
He said a stat line for each game: the shooting or 50% in field goal and 3-pointers scoring over 25 a game. Wisconsin doesn't have a bench. Those are correct statements. That's a what is that? A 14-3 game? I think right?
3-14, yeah.
3-14.
Yeah. I actually have Montana winning that game.
You did.
I don't know what you guys have, but I don't think Wisconsin's that good.
I have Wisconsin winning and then losing to BYU.
Yeah, I have BYU beating Montana in that second round game.
So here are the schools in the crown. All right. Arizona State, Boise State, Butler, Cincinnati, Colorado. DePaul.
Mm.
Under what roof should DePaul be in a postseason tournament?
Wow. Yeah. You might as well pick a high school.
Georgetown.
Georgetown?
Jesus.
Georgetown?
Yes. Nebraska, Oregon State, Tulane, UCF, USC, Utah, Washington State, and Villanova.
It's like the NBA play-in tournament, basically.
It's like the Bad News Bears tournament
With throwing all these schools in. Joe, I wanted to ask you, obviously, Creighton did beat UConn and has been inconsistent, but good for the most part. Do you think that they will come out on top of Louisville in the 8-9 game?
See what I picked there. I think I picked, yeah. And then getting whacked by Auburn.
Okay. And then you said that you had Yale beating Texas A&M.
I have Yale getting to the Sweet 16 against Auburn.
Right.
That's my big upset special.
And the other Big East school, Marquette with New Mexico. You think Marquette will beat New Mexico and they could do well and make it to the Sweet 16, or do you think
they'll lose to Michigan State?
Okay. So realistically,
St. John's will be
the only team, right?
To get to the Sweet 16.
Do you think that with I think it was 14 SEC teams getting in? Yeah,
they set the record.
Yeah. Do you think it's that the SEC is that good, or that so many of these conferences are just weak other than one or two teams?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, Shu. I tend to go on the side of, the SEC team. I mean, Oklahoma was 6-10 in the SEC or whatever their record was.
Right.
I think there's a lot of mediocre teams. I think there's a lot of good teams there, but I think there's a lot of mediocre teams as well. I mean, Mississippi State was 8-10. Georgia was 8-10. Oklahoma was 6-12.
Jeez.
In the conference. And you look at their non-conference wins, all right? They beat Providence by 2. They beat Arizona by 5. They beat Louisville by 5. They beat Georgia Tech by 15. They beat Michigan by 1. And then they got in the conference play and, didn't do great. I mean, they had a stretch where they lost to Auburn, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, and Florida. Now, granted, that's really good competition, but it's 5 losses in a row. I think the SEC is good, is really good, but I don't know if they should have gotten 14 teams in.
Yeah. And I had thought, maybe I'm way off base on this, but
that never happened, so I wouldn't.
No, of course that never happens. I'm never way off base. Teams that have a losing record in the conference typically would hurt their chances of getting into the NCAA tournament. No, I mean, wasn't that the case before?
I have always been in favor that if you can't be 500 in your league, you can't go to the NCAAs.
Yeah.
Now, because we've got these super conferences, you probably couldn't fly by that rule. But, right. I mean, I think a team that's, whatever I just said, they were in their 6-12 in their conference. Yeah. I mean, come on. What are we doing here?
I just think Joe, do you think some of it has to do with like the merging of all these other leagues? I mean, there's
absolutely.
There's just so many teams, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So other conferences might get less, but that's because a lot of these top teams are merging with other conferences.
Well, you look at all the Pac-12 schools that found new homes, right. Big Ten and ACC, and not in the SEC. The SEC only added Texas and Oklahoma,
right?
And look, that was purely for football. That had nothing, and none of this has anything to do with basketball.
No, none of it.
But those are two teams that probably maybe would have finished in the top of the Big 12 had they stayed, and now they're in the SEC. So, you know what I mean? Like, at least that's how I look at it in terms of some of these conferences getting more. And you see that on the women's side, too. I mean, you know, with the Big Ten. I mean, it's like, I mean, there's more than 10 teams. They should probably change the name, but a lot of these mergers are just creating like super conferences. So it's like, even if you're 10th in one league, you still probably would have finished maybe in the top 3 in another. So I think that plays a big piece of it.
And Joe, they had talked about it in football of possibly having a separate playoffs with maybe only the SEC and the Big Ten. Do you think something like that could eventually happen with basketball?
Clock is ticking.
It is.
Clock is ticking.
So it's going to get to that point because
I think it will.
They're not going to want.
There'll be a point where the 4 power conferences, and that includes the Big 12, decide we don't need the NCAA to help us make money for basketball. Because look, the NCAA is not involved in the football playoffs.
Not at all. No,
that's an independent thing from the NCAA, and that's why there's this concern that UConn's got to get into a power conference, because if they're not, and they're stuck in the Big East, and they're in the basketball thing happens, nobody's going to be happy.
Right. And even in football, if miraculously UConn did go 11-0 this season, which they're not going to, even if they did, they're probably not going to be ranked, and they're not going to have a chance at any of the playoffs or the postseason other than, just another bowl game. Right. That's the downfall of it. And that's all the revenue that they're losing.
Well, and unfortunately, and look, some of the best times I had doing games was when we went to bowl games. But unfortunately, the bowl games have all lost their luster because guys opt out. Guys don't want to play.
Completely.
Why should I pay $50 for a ticket when not all the best players are going to play? It's the same problem that the NBA is going to have in years with all this load management bullshit. You have enough money. Marie and I can take our kids to one NBA game a year. So we're going to take them to Oklahoma City and Milwaukee, and Shea Gilchrist-Alexander and Giannis aren't playing because it's their night to rest. Right?
What would happen to the all these mid majors if that became the case? If the NCAA went to the big conferences or something like that, because
they do a separate tournament most likely.
But isn't that where all their money comes from? The mid majors, they don't make any money outside of the NCAAs, right? So
well, the other problem for one of the big problems that mid majors are going to be facing is that because these leagues are so much bigger now, they're not playing as many non-conference games against the mid majors, and that's those football and basketball blowout games that mid majors schedule purely for revenue. Those are starting to dwindle away, and that's really going to hurt their pocketbook.
Yeah, because that's what funds basically the athletic department for the entire year. Some of those big games.
That's right.
And losing those is horrible and detrimental to everything, and it affects all the other sports. And that's why you could see some sports getting cut. You could see sports getting cut because football is moving to 100 scholarships, and that's also the roster limit. They've increased the scholarship numbers across the board in all of the sports, but that doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily use them in all the sports. They're going to use them in some of them, but they're going to try to take advantage and spend the money where they see fit best to generate the most revenue for the college. And it's not going to be necessarily in rowing. So that's the other issue that's going on.
All right, let's get back to basketball because the March Madness is underway. To be honest with you, I think people have grown tired of hearing about the finances. I just want to point this out about this Oklahoma team. who we're going to see at 9:25 on TNT on Friday night. Only the freshman kid, Fears, is an original Sooner. They have the one kid who played at Syracuse, Providence, and Fairfield.
Wow.
Duke Miles played at Troy and High Point. Jalen Morris played at Georgia Tech. And the big kid who's subbing for another kid who's injured played a year of junior college and then 1 year apiece at West Virginia and Alabama.
Wow.
The whole thing's a mess.
Wow.
Wow.
That's not how it should be.
Well, but Maria, it's not like that on the women's side, is it?
No. Not even close.
No, not even close.
I mean, the only player that I can think of that's really had multiple places and still kind of been successful is Haley Van Lith, right? She started at Louisville. She went to LSU. Now she's at TCU. I thought she should have never gone to LSU. That was whoever gave her that advice should be fired emphatically. Like, what a bad fit for that kid. Now she's shining at TCU and helping build that program up. So it's one-offs on the women's side. It's not. Yeah, you can go through multiple rosters on the men's side where you're like, I remember I was watching a game a couple of weeks ago and I was like, I thought that kid was somewhere else last year and the year before. Right. And I'm like, I can't even keep track of like where some of these kids are anymore.
Well, I mean, and look at UConn's starting backcourt last year. 2 kids who were on their 3rd school.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy to think about.
And I think it can be beneficial with certain circumstances, right? Like, Cam Spencer was only on his 2nd, right? He was Rutgers and then UConn.
No, he was a place before Rutgers.
Oh, he was somewhere before Rutgers. Yeah. But I mean, like, geez, I would take 10 Cam Spencers. I mean, he was a home run, but it doesn't always work out that way.
My thing would be you get 1 free transfer.
Yeah, right. I agree.
And if you transfer a second time, you got to sit out a year.
Yeah.
And then you got to make a decision. Because for a lot of these kids, if they're forced to sit out a year, they don't become as attractive to these coaches.
No.
And then there's consequence, and then the decision becomes harder. It's like, yeah, how many times are you going to go until you get it right?
Right.
And then you got other kids that are there that have been working their butts off for 2 years, and then this kid steps in on his 3rd school. Now you're riding the pine again. I agree. It should just be 1, and then a consequence after that.
I think it's never going to happen because of litigation.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Immediately, that's what will happen.
Precedent has already been set.
That happens, yeah. They'll litigate, and that will be, unfortunately, that's what will happen because the money in the associations is not enough. They don't. If you sue one of these associations, they don't have the money to fight it. They just don't.
No, and it stays in court forever, and eventually they get their money.
These are multi-million-dollar things that are costing. They're taking it on. The lawyer's going to take it on contingency on behalf of the player, but the NCAA or the organization is going to be paying out that. So eventually, the group in contingency, knowing that that's going to happen, is going to win. So.
Joe, is March Madness, would you say it's your favorite time of year? Do you love watching basketball from Thursday through Monday and seeing all the games?
It used to be.
Yeah.
And really when I was doing the games,
yes,
you wouldn't get to see as many games because you had practices and workouts and you were traveling and stuff. I didn't watch either game last night, and I won't watch either game tonight. I might watch a little of the Xavier game because they're a Big East team. But, Thursday night I'm going to Boston to watch a successful UConn team, the hockey team, play in the Hockey East semifinals.
Right.
And then Saturday and Sunday I've got UConn softball on Flow Sports. So yeah, it's not. I agree with Dan Shaughnessy. It's not it's not the same as it was. It's just not the same as it was. I'll try to watch as much women's as I can, even though the early rounds of the women's tournament, like which directional school is UConn playing in the opening round of the women's tournament? Who they playing? Arkansas State.
Arkansas State.
I mean, that reeks to me of 60-point blowout. That's the problem with the women's. It used to be the problem with the women's tournament is that those early round games were never. You very rarely had a 15 beating a 2.
Never. Has that ever happened?
Yeah. Well, you had a 16. Harvard was a 16 who beat Stanford that time.
Right.
Stanford was a 1, but it happens few and far between. Now, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I get more giggles now out of the NFL playoffs and out of the hockey playoffs than I do out of March Madness.
Yeah, and that's a shame because March Madness was the most popular postseason event, and it has dwindled down because of everything that's happened. And hopefully things pick up, and hopefully we see some competitive matchups. And looking at everything else, the other game I wanted to ask, because I asked about Marquette, was Iowa State, because I had seen them a couple times. Do you think Iowa State could end up in the Sweet 16?
I got to find them first.
They're playing Lipscomb.
Yeah, I got them beating Lipscomb, the Lippers, and I have them beaten North Carolina, who I think is going to beat Mississippi. Right. In fact, then I haven't beaten Michigan State. So I got them going all the way to the Elite 8 and then getting whacked by Auburn.
Oh, good.
Well, so Steve, let me caution.
I was on the right track.
Just because I said it's going to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. When I worked at the radio station at TIC and we would do we would do brackets, I hated doing it because if I didn't get it exactly right, all I would hear was, well, you're the basketball guy. Why don't you know what you're talking about?
Yeah. No,
well, that's why I say, like, if everything's equal and there's no Cinderella, like, right. And like, listen, I love a Cinderella story like everybody else, but what that ends up being is having really horrible Sweet 16 games where they're completely lopsided. And that's what I hate. So, I'm good for like 1 or 2 upsets, but when the brackets get crazy and all these top teams start losing, I start to lose steam because I'm like, nobody wants to watch a 1 seed play against a 15 in the Sweet 16. Like, nobody wants that.
Well, and to that point, Maria, most people want to turn on and see schools that they recognize.
Sure.
Exactly.
The idea, I mean,
the idea that we both want Yale is because we're from Connecticut. If I wasn't from Connecticut,
I couldn't give a rat's ass.
Correct. So like, your brackets always kind of skew to the teams that you enjoy watching. And when all of them are knocked out, like in crazy fashion, it becomes boring to me.
Nobody wants to see Lipscomb play Winthrop in the Sweet 16.
Are you saying Alabama State can't beat Auburn coming up here after their last second Hail Mary shot to get out of the back of the back bracket?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, here were last year's 1 versus 16s. 91-52, UConn beat the Mad Hatters of Stetson. 90-62, North Carolina beat Wagner. 86-46, Houston beat Longwood. And then Purdue beat Grambling State 78-50. Those were your, and the 2s weren't any better. Tennessee stomped on St. Peter's. Marquette won by 18 over Western Kentucky. Arizona won by 25 over Long Beach State. Iowa State only won by 17 over South Dakota State. Yeah, I mean, I'm with Maria. An upset on Thursday or Friday is nice, but once it gets to the round of 32, I want to see teams I recognize.
You want the big names, yeah.
Because those teams don't have a chance, right? Because they really just have zero chance if somehow they get there.
Well, like if you're a fan of like college basketball, why would you not want to see a Duke Florida final this year on the men's side?
Right, exactly.
Like,
exactly.
I can't fathom any other scenario where somebody would say, no, like I'd rather, some team
Duke
out
versus
of,
Belmont.
yeah, some small school out of Illinois getting there. Like, hey, come on, let's get real here. The only people that want that are the people that went to the school.
Or the people who bet on it.
Joe, Demetrius
definitely.
wanted to know who you think is the toughest bracket as you're looking at it right now. Is it the Florida bracket?
No,
it's not. Okay,
not even close.
Houston.
Yeah, I'd say yes.
Houston.
I would say Houston.
Like Houston will probably have to play Gonzaga in the second round.
Right, and I think they'll beat. This is not a vintage Gonzaga.
But it's not. But it's not a cupcake second round.
No, the problem for Gonzaga will be scoring. The problem for anybody against Houston will be scoring.
Yeah,
but there'll come a game, and I've got it as Houston, Kentucky, where I don't know if Houston can score enough. You know, at some point, you have to score to win. It's called basketball. You have to put the ball in the basket.
Yes.
For those of you out there who aren't familiar with it. You know how I rate the brackets? I always go look at the top 4 seeds and see what I think. And so the South has Michigan State, Auburn, Texas A&M, and Iowa State. That doesn't float me. The West has Florida, the Johnnies, Texas Tech, and Maryland. That's not spectacular. The East has Duke, Alabama, Wisconsin, and Arizona. Yeah, that's not, So I think it's definitely the Midwest. I think it's Houston, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Purdue. I think by far that's the best bracket. So there you go, Demetrius.
Demetrius also said, because you went through the first and second round from last year, he wants to know if you think that it will be the same margin of victories this year. You don't think that they're anticipating the same thing? No 1 or 2 cent will lose in the first round? Or 1 or 2 seat will lose in the first round?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No.
And he also thinks Yale, High Point University, and Montana have a chance of moving on to the next round.
I would urge him not to wager his money on that.
And Courtney Williams says hello, and he thinks a good Cinderella story will be VCU and Florida Gulf Coast. Those were his picks.
Well, that's his example of good stories.
Yes. He thinks those could be the good stories of this coming year.
I don't think Florida Gulf Coast isn't even in it.
No, he was giving an example of prior years. He's not saying
that's prior years. It's
Florida Gulf Coast. They're in on the women's side, but they're not in on the
right. The women's side. Got you. I got you there.
I have a question. Is Grand Canyon University, that used to be an online? I thought they were like an online university.
You're thinking of the University of Phoenix.
No, I think Grand Canyon used to originally be an online university that then took the money and built a Division I sports program.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Wonder if I'm right on that. I thought they were, but
I'm looking it up
because they took a lot of, because obviously they have a good amount. Do they have a team in the men and women, or just women? I can't remember if both men and women got in. But
I thought
women, I saw, because it was all like.
Well, I know on the women there are, because they had a big upset, and the coach, is an Instagram sensation now.
Yeah, dance.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and
it's always Grand Canyon's always been a school.
It has, okay.
Yeah, since 1949. No, I think, and you know, Shu, how much it pains me to say this, but I think Cully's right. I think you're thinking of University of Phoenix.
Yeah, maybe I am. I thought I used to see a lot of ads from Grand Canyon University, but I could be wrong.
And Joe, Coach Lyndon Johnson, we had him on the other day. He wanted.
I saw that. I love LBJ.
Yeah, he's the man. He's working in cybersecurity, so he's probably got all our phones tapped. So
that's right.
Just watch out. No, he was awesome. So going into this weekend, if you had to pick, I mean, we've talked about it already. Going into the Sweet 16, who would you say would be, your top major upsets in the four conferences? Looking at it,
In the four conferences,
the four brackets,
regions. Well,
regions.
I've already said Yale. I think is
Yes,
getting
Yale,
Sweet 16, and frankly,
Iowa State.
I've got Auburn, Yale, Iowa State, Michigan State.
Yeah,
I've got Florida, Memphis. I got Memphis beating Maryland in round 2. Missouri and St. John's. I've got Duke, Arizona, BYU, and Vandy. And then I got Houston, Purdue, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
Yeah, so, I had BYU as well.
Well, maybe I'll change mine then.
No,
I have to interject quickly. Grand Canyon University has 101,000 students.
What?
67,000 undergraduates, 35,000 graduate, online and evening cohort students, 86,000. So they're primarily an online university. They maybe they weren't founded that way, but that's how they made their money. And they I think that's what began to fund their groups going to Division I, because they have so many online students. It's like an affordable education kind of deal there. So I think they probably followed University of Phoenix. I think Steve's 100% right, because that was the most famous one. But I think they followed because they're also out in Arizona. So I think they probably followed it. But it's interesting. 101,000 students. Think about that. That's a cash cow right there. Damn it. I should have invented that.
Oh, Maria Demetrius also wanted to know your top upsets, or who you think will make the Sweet 16 that most likely would not have.
We're talking on the men's side?
On the women's side.
Oh, on the women's side.
Yeah.
Let's see who I got here. Let's see. Well, I already talked about Vandy.
Yeah.
I like Vandy. I think Tennessee is gonna go a little further than people think in that bracket. Let's see here. Like I said, I think Fairfield's going to win 2 games, which will both be upsets. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, and then you got your Ivy League schools on the women's side. I mean,
yeah,
they have 3 teams in. I think, any of those 3 teams can pull off an upset. In what is it, Columbia, Princeton, and Harvard.
Harvard,
right?
Yeah.
So I actually have Harvard winning that first game against Michigan State. I think that's a winnable game for them. On the women's side, it's a little tougher to predict some upsets there.
Yeah.
But what I always say is funny, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, is like, I actually think in some scenarios, probably more specifically on the men's side, that 8-9 game that plays the 1, for whatever reason, always ends up being harder than the 2, 3, 4 seeds, because there's so many upsets on that back end there in that first round, that I've seen many years where like that 1 to verse 8-9 game is like, that's a bigger game, I feel like, than sometimes the 2 seed playing in that second round, because you see some of those random upsets in the first round.
Yeah, I'd have to do research on that, Maria, but I wouldn't agree with you on that. I think a lot of times you see a 7 beat a 2. I don't think you often see an 8 or a 9 beat a 1.
Yeah.
I think the trap game is the 2-7 game. For whatever reason. Because normally what happens is the winner of 8-9 has to play their ass off to win that game, and the 1 skates through, and then the 1's a lot fresher 2 days later, as opposed to the 8-9. I mean, yeah, you look at if we're going by this year. So if we're looking, Auburn would play either Louisville or Creighton. They're not losing to those teams.
No.
Florida would play either UConn or Oklahoma. They're not losing to those teams. Duke would play either Mississippi State or Baylor. not losing to those teams. And Houston would play either Gonzaga or Georgia. That might be of all those, that might be the one that's a little bit, you could see the 8-9 making it a game with like 5 minutes to go.
I guess I just mean it in terms of like, okay, you got the 11-6 game. If the 11 seed wins, right now the higher seed is playing an 11 seed versus the 1 is playing an 8-9. I guess I just meant it more in terms of that. Like, even if you look at like the 7-10 game, well, we've seen the 10 seed win a bunch of times. So that 2 seed isn't playing a 7 seed anymore. Now they're playing a 10 seed.
Right.
And the 1 seed is still playing an 8 or 9 seed, which is technically ranked higher. Right. I just feel like we see more of those upsets in that first round where the higher seed ends up playing a lower seed than that 1 team.
Yeah, except I think you could throw a blanket over 7, 8, 9, 10, and there's not much difference.
Yeah.
In those teams.
Yep.
Joe Demetrius says, Joe, I really want you to do research on Montana compared to Michigan. I understand the talent level is far-fetched to see realistically Montana has a bench 50% field goal percentage and 40% from three-point range.
Demetrius, who did they play during the regular season? Answer that question.
Thank you, Demetrius. We appreciate your feedback. Joe, so you have
I'm going to be watching that game. I'm watching the Montana game now.
We're getting crazy feedback. It's wild. Joe, so you have a busy
grab a lunch. Demetrius, maybe go grab a lunch and a latte.
Joe, so you have a busy weekend. You said you're going to Boston for hockey, right?
Yep, just to watch, just as a spectator.
That's awesome.
Like I was Friday night sitting next to Gino and Kathy.
And then you said softball Sunday?
Well, it's supposed to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but the weather is supposed to be nasty on Friday, so it could be 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday.
Demetrius says if he is right, he wants to be invited on. So
we'll good. I'll take that week off.
We'll get back to him.
You enjoy that.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you again for outstanding insight and analysis and breaking the tournament down. We appreciate it.
Do we know who this Demetrius is?
No, we don't. No. Joe, if you could have seen the other night, we
Rebel Republic.
We had a habitual commentator who was attacking Dave quite often.
Great.
Yes, and Dave was giving it back, and then Dave eventually shut him down. He wouldn't respond to him, and that just made him more angry, and he just kept writing more paragraphs. But
he actually wrote me, by the way. Do you know that? He DM'd me.
Did he really?
Yeah, he was like, "I love your guys' podcast. Your podcast is great. Can I come on?"
Oh, he wants to come on.
He wants to come on.
Yeah, okay.
Everyone comes on. It's more like Oprah. You get a car, and you get a car.
You get a car.
Everyone wants to come on. Thanks, Demetrius. We know anything can happen in March. Well, Joe, again, the best of the best, the voice of the Huskies, the icon himself. We appreciate your time, expert analysis. He's covering his face. Expert analysis and insight. We appreciate it. Maria, UConn women's basketball legend, head women's basketball coach at Western Connecticut State University, a lovely wolf. And then there's Coach Human.
Let me just say this. If you're a car dealer watching this program, then you want to get in touch with Coach Conlon and so we can have radio ads like Liam McNeely and Aubrey Griffin and Aiden Mahaney drive such and such a car. Next year, I want to hear the 2 or 3 of the Wolves who are driving your cars. So get in touch with Coach Conlon now.
I love it.
Oh, we'll get it done. We'll get it done for sure.
Okay, Steve, we will.
Go Montana.
I will get it done.
Montana.
I will go Montana. Demetrius is really pulling for Montana.
That's where I want to move, by the way.
That's going to be the first thing I bring up next week. How did Montana do?
Do you know the first place I applied to for a job in radio was Montana?
Bozeman?
There was an opening for Montana football and basketball play-by-play, and I wasn't in radio yet. I had my license and stuff, but I didn't have a job yet. So I applied for the job. Obviously, I didn't get it. And then when I look back at it, me as a 23-year-old in Montana wouldn't have been a happy ending.
Well, you may have been great on the rodeo circuit.
Yeah.
Bozeman's nice, though. Bozeman's nice.
I could see that.
I understand Bozeman's nice, but it just wouldn't have.
It
wouldn't
not
have
at all.
out.
Not at all.
Let's just say for a variety of reasons and leave it at that.
I'm trying to find a place, another place to retreat to that's far away from human beings. And
Thanks, Dave. I'm glad.
I'm trying to find, like a nice little house I could go retreat at, far away from human beings, but close enough that I could get something to eat. I don't want to be starving, but
Yeah, of course we have to eat. But Joe, I would say that it was fate because it brought you to me. So that's what matters most. You got to look at it as fate. If Joe could come through the screen and strangle me, he probably would. So thank you again. And this has been Husky Hoops. And remember, Dave, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemons.